Cool. Welcome everyone. Thanks for making the time for popping in for a unit standard review update at this busy time of year. You can chuck some questions in the chat, or we should have tons of time for you to come off mute and ask questions along the way. I thought I'd just run through where we're up to at this point, and then answer as many questions as I can, or at the least flick you in the right direction of where you can find some answers, hopefully. I'll share a few screens and ways to find stuff as we go along as well. So I will start that now. You don't need to see that one. So kicking off with NZQA, this is their homepage, and there's been a little bit of a debacle, probably is the fair term to use, on actually getting the new unit standards up onto NZQA. All of the standards have been approved by NZQA. It's only the uploading and information that sits on their website that is not quite up to date yet. So finding where the standards are off the home page, through to through to the standards page, find a standard, browse the standards, and then a couple ways to go about it, either to go straight into community and social services, and then you will go down and find outdoor recreation, or you can just search for outdoors up here in the classification framework. So this brings you to all of the domains that sit within outdoor recreation. And if we pick an example, let's go mountain biking. You will see this table looking very much as it has for quite some time. So if you just look at this table, you'd think nothing had changed, but it actually has. And these, either the PDF document or the Word document, have been updated to either the new standard, or if it's a standard that it's expiring, it will say on there. So one of the ways to find the new standard is just to go through all of the unit standards you currently use and click on the PDF option, and then you'll see that this is actually a new standard. You can see it's got a new title, the credits are different. Easy way to tell that it's a new one is you'll see the 2021 date here, and at the very end you'll see the next planned review date is a 2026 date. So that tells you that it's the new approved unit standard. You'll be able to also tell if you look at the version. So that's one way of working through and finding the new versions of standards, but it won't find you the completely new standards. So in the review, there were standards that had have new versions. They're the ones that are up on NZQA now. If you go to the PDF or Word document, there are totally new standards. They've all been approved, but they're not up on NZQA. A lot of those sit in the outdoor management domain, and that domain doesn't look any different at the moment. Just pop in there. So in the outdoor management domain, you can see there's nothing new in here yet. There's also expiring standards. So if you search a standard that's expiring, you won't be able to tell that from that table page of NZQA, but if you click on the PDF or Word, this is what will come up. So those standards have been updated. You can see it's expiring at the top, and it's also got the watermark across it. Important to note, you still have got 2 years to use these standards, and any pre-moderated assessment resources that go with these standards. I'll touch a little bit more on that later. We've looked at that being particularly problematic to actually work out what the new standards are. So after this webinar, I'll send out everyone who's registered a link to a Google Drive file that has all of the new approved unit standards and the expiring standards on it. They look slightly different, but they're just in layout. So here's an example of one that's actually expiring. You'll see it says it's expiring down here, but it doesn't have the watermark on it like you would see if you downloaded it straight off the NZQA site. And here's an example of a new standard as you'll see it. This one looks exactly the same. You can see that it's new by this date down here, and also the copyright date and the change of version up here. So I'll send that link out. Unfortunately, the standards in that Google Drive don't have the title beside them. They just have the numbers. So it's pretty easy for you to find the numbers that you're using at the moment. And if you're looking for the new standards, they're the sets that start with 32,000. So they all start with 3.2. So you can find them in that list and have a look. The NZQA problem doesn't just relate to the outdoor rec standards. It's across all the standards, I believe, that were approved by NZQA in October and November. So I don't know, somewhere around 600 to 800 standards, I hear. So it is taking some time to sort out. The next thing I wanted to update you on today is Toymai. Sorry, and I'll just whip back so you can see where I got to here. So Toymai, the Workforce Development Council, their role is dealing with consent to assess and pre and post moderation. Pre-moderation if you want to have your own material moderated. The Skills Active EONS material that we're developing at the moment, and I'll show you in a minute, will all be pre-moderated through Toymai, and that process is happening at the moment. What Toymai don't do is they don't supply assessment resources. So that is either EONS or Skills Active. So you'll have a choice of those two organisations to get your pre-moderated assessment materials for next year for the new standards. If you're continuing to use existing standards, you will already have that pre-moderated assessment material. You can continue to use that as you use those existing version numbers for the next 2 years, but you can change at any time over to the new versions. One thing while we're talking about old and new versions of standards, if you are choosing to continue using the current version you're using, or it will become old as soon as the new standards are all uploaded, you need to be really careful with how you deal with particularly KMAR. I'm not sure about other student management systems, but KMAR, when you're uploading your results, likes you to automatically update to the most current version. And if you do that, but your assessment material is for this year's unit standards and the old version of the unit standards, you will have a problem. So I believe the solution is cutting and pasting your mark book over and not letting KMAR update to the newest version of the standard, if you want to continue to use the unit standards you've been using, or the versions of the unit standards you've been using this year. There was a question that came through to me where they were asking if they could use the new version, and it was with tramping. The participate in a day tramp to 425 used to sit, and if you used it this year, it would have sat at level 2. Next year, as the new version, it goes to level 1. So there's quite a change of level. So someone was asking whether they could use it, the new version, at level 1 with their level 1 classes, but still use the old version, which they can use for another 2 years, with their level 2 class. I think that would probably push Kmart over the edge. So there need to be, you would want to do some careful research to make sure that that's going to work before you go down that track. And I'm not sure is the answer to that. But you definitely want to look at how that's going to work and how you can report that without causing poor old Kmart to stop working. So in Toymai, to find out more information about the review, just go follow the pathway. There's a little bit here, and then we can just follow through to the update. This page and the link to it was sent out in the last newsletter, but if you haven't seen that, this is where to find it all. You can look at the full review report. You can see the main summary here about what's really changed, and importantly, the impact on what you're doing with consent to assess. There's a little bit of change in this wee table where you automatically, if you hold, for example, the consent to assess for 20160 at level 3, you automatically get consent to assess for 32876 at level 3. So this is a good little table to check first up. List of all the standards that are expiring, list of all the standards that are changing versions, and within those versions, some of them are changing levels, just about all of them are changing credits, just about all of them have had a change in title, and some of them have changed domain. Okay, so it's really worth doing a bit of working out now, looking at what you're currently using and what's happened to those standards. And you can see here the numbers of the new standards, and they're the ones that are not up on NZQA yet, but I'll send you the link so you can see all those new standards as they're approved out of our Google Drive. There's some checking you can do here around what your organisation's consent to assess is now, and then there's a button to click, or you can find out about the process, and then there's a button to click to add and start that process of gaining consent to assess to either standards you don't have consent to assess now, or ones you'd like to add. Important point here is that we've managed to get the outdoor management domain at level 1 and 2, which contains all of the core unit standards going forward, into the base scope for schools. So level 1 and 2, outdoor management as a domain, you don't need to do anything about extending your consent to assess. You automatically have that as a school. So hopefully for a number of people that are just going up to level 2, that'll mean there may be nothing that you have to do around your consent to assess, or it may be very minor. If you're going to level 3, then you will need to extend your scope if you don't hold it as a domain for outdoor management. So it's good to work out what you hold and then what you might need to do. Also, if you want to use your own pre-moderated material, then there's the information here on how you do that, and that work goes through the Toymai process. Are there any questions so far on NZQA and Toymai before I move on to what the assessment resources look like in that process.
Fiona, do you know what the moderation process will look like through Toymai? Because we don't really currently seem to have one.
No, it's a simple answer. Not sure what moderation will look like. I'm assuming it will look fairly similar. What's happened in Toymai is they're just building up their capacity at the moment. They're still recruiting desperately. So they'll build what that process looks like over the next wee while. A couple of key staff from Skills Active's moderation team have gone over and are leading the Toymai team. So I suspect it'll look very similar to what it has in the past for us. But there's nothing concrete on that quite yet. Anyone else? Just jump off mute. We don't need to be too formal. Cool. All right, so if we look at the new resources now, the first 6 of those resources, they're in the outdoor management and their cores, are with Toymai now for moderation, or for pre-moderation. They're hopeful that they'll be back to Skills Active and EONS early next week, so fingers crossed, and we'll be getting those out to people as quickly as we can after that. Toymai have also kind of committed that they will get the Schedule A unit standard resources through pre-moderation by Christmas. So where EONS is going with trying to have those out in the week of the 17th of January available to schools. So where to find information? There's not much now, but on the EONS website under resources, there's a unit standard assessment resources tab, and this basically has not too much in there at the moment, but what it does have is what Schedule A involves, what standards are in there, and will be out hopefully before school starts. Skills Active and EONS are working at, or about to start working on the Priority B schedule. And if I'll just flip this over here in front of there. So this is the Schedule A standards. So these should have their assessment resources written and pre-moderated, sort of 2 weeks before you start, or a week at least before you start term next year. We're starting to work now on Priority B. So these ones, in all likelihood, might be into term 1 a little bit, but hopefully not. We've definitely done the hardest ones. The cores were easily the hardest standards to write. And once we get our first set through Toymai and we're confident about what they're looking for, I think that process will hopefully be reasonably quick with them, because all of the standards follow a fairly set structure, which I can show you that in a minute as well. So a little bit of information on how access to the assessment standards, assessment resources will work. Skills Active and EONS are developing them together, but at the end of the development process, we are going to take the take the sets of resources and do 2 different things with them. So EONS' set of resources will stay as Word documents. They will stay as individual standards. So when you get access to them through EONS, you'll have the ability to dump them into Google Drive or into Google Docs, or whatever other clever electronic system you want to use with them. You could turn them into writable PDFs. You could print them out, as many copies as you need, but basically from Eons, you'll get them as an electronic Word document. Obviously, the material within them, because it's been pre-moderated, that can't change, but there's nothing to say you can't add little extra instructions or change formats, etc., collect information electronically. I'm sure you can play around with them and really make them work for you. So for joining the Eons consortium, will rely on being a member and a $200 fixed annual fee. That gets you access to as many of the assessment resources as you want over the year. And it will allow us, hopefully we've set the amount at a number that allows us to administrate that and make sure we've got the capability to review, add to and pre-moderate as we go on, and add additional support resources even. Who knows? So the process for joining the Eons consortium, we're just working with our web provider at the moment. We thought we'd have it up and going by now, but nothing simple. It's probably just going to be a subscription. So you'll be able to go onto our website and subscribe to be a member, and then you automatically get access. If you want to pay for that now, we can do that. We've done that for a number of schools that have said, can we fit that bill into this year's budget? If you just email me at office@eons.org.nz, I can get that arranged for you, and we'll just keep a list. What we're aiming to do as soon as those first 6 assessment resources come back from Toymai is to get them up into our system. So you'll basically start having access as soon as we do. Won't necessarily be in one big lump. There might be a bit drip fed as soon as they come back from Toymai. Just checking. I can show you, before I show you an example of what the resources will look like, Skills Active, you can also get your resources from Skills Active as you have in the past. They'll run the resource catalogue as they have done. They are thinking that they will pull together different units into more of a modular approach, an integrated approach like they have started doing now. And I believe they're going to stay with the per student charge. So you've got a couple of choices about which way you want to go, and either of those is absolutely fine. They'll just look different. Theirs will come, as they do now, as PDFs, I think, or sometimes you get them as hard copies, don't you? Right, so... All right, so examples of what the resources look like. So these are the ones that have just gone off to Toymai, so obviously still draft. This is one of the cores at level 1. So there's the whole intro bit, that's pretty standard. What you have to do is the assessment process, some guidelines, more guidelines, some definitions, and then with each task, these look very similar to what you're working with now. You've got, so this is the assessor guide. You've got what the task is for the student, the evidence that's required, and then for the ones where it makes sense, there's sample answers. There's not sample answers for everything. Eons has had an expert group of 4 teachers looking at these and obviously making suggestions and really pointing out where they think a sample answer would clarify the level of information required. Really important point is that the sample answer is the minimum. It's You could certainly expect a lot more from your students, but this is the minimum required for the standard. Also with the assessment resources, you're really trapped into what's in the standards. And as always, even though the 4 experts that are working on, or EONS experts that are working on this, we're involved in writing the standards, there's still been the occasional point where we've gone, why in the world did we put it like that in the standard? So there's always that room for continual improvement. And then they also come with the assessment booklet. So this is the one that will, well, they'll both come as Word documents, but this is the one that you can really put in whatever format you like. And you can obviously do some different things around collecting student information, and I think get rid of some of the double ups that occur if you just use them, print them off and use them as a booklet. But either option, completely up to you. And again, in here, you'll need to have what information the assessment comes with, but you can add to it. So you can just see it's pretty standard. Obviously, depending on what format you're using, you can make things bigger, smaller, electronic. So any questions around the assessment resources and what they look like, timings, anything really? That's, I think, all I was going to show you. So yeah, I'm good for questions about anything we've gone over so far.
Is there a list of like what standards will have resources and which ones won't, or are they all going to have?
All of the ones on the development schedule. So this schedule here, this Schedule A, the resources are already all written. They're just at different stages in the process. And Schedule B here, these ones haven't been started, but we've got a commitment to write them. So somewhere during term 1, I'm guessing, but all of those resources will be available. Schedule A should be before the start of the year. Schedule B somewhere during the year. You can print that document off this page here on EONS's website if you want to compare what you're doing with what new standards and resources are available. That Schedule A, some of the numbers aren't in the ID column. They're the new standards, but in the Google Drive that I share with you, all of the standards have now got numbers.
Where do we find the costs for the standards, for the resources?
So if you're coming through EONS, it's $200 flat for the year. You can have as many or as little as you like for that. You can download them at any time during the year, and that's it. So you just need to be an EONS member and pay $200. For if you're going through the Skills Active, their pricing will be in their resource catalogue, which you'll find off their website.
Okay, and so they're all obviously they're all pre-moderated, $200 flat fee for all the resources.
Correct. If you're coming through EONS, that all of the resources on those 2 lists, pre-moderated, good to go. So you've got 3 choices really for resource assessment resources. You work through EONS and you pay a flat fee and a membership. You go to Skills Active and you pay most likely per student, per resource, or per resource, but resources often contain more than one standard. Or you get your own material developed and pre-moderated through Toymai.
And what's the cost, or where do we find out the cost about getting our own stuff pre-moderated through Toymai?
You do that through Toymai. There is a link here about the process and how you go about that there. Other questions?
So is it correct that as far as you know, there's no exclusions to using two different versions of the same standard? Like apart from it's hard administratively, like there's no reason if we can handle the admin, it's possible?
I need to follow up on that to give you an answer there. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do that in Kmart, but I can, I'll find that answer out and flick it out to everyone that's on this call.
Hey, is there at the moment only the new versions of the unit standards are on NZQA? Are the older versions going to be available as well?
No. So as soon as there's a new version, that's it. The new version is the one that sits on NZQA.
So we need to find the old versions if we want to deliver them over the next 2 years somewhere else.
I imagine you will already have the old versions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll have the old versions, you'll have the old assessment resources, and you can keep using those until they expire.
How does
You won't be able to download new ones or new copies of those off NZQA.
How does the consent to assess work? Is it still the same, or?
I think it's reasonably similar, but that's a question for Toymai, and you find that in exactly the same line of information off the Toymai website. You can just flick them a email. They've got an email address there, but they've also got a link to some information there.
And you said that all schools automatically get the core standards are approved? We don't need to do anything at all? So
for the outdoor management domain, where the core standards are going into the outdoor management domain, that is going into the base scope for schools at level 1 and 2. So if you're just using them at level 1 and 2, got nothing to do to be able to use those standards. If you want to use the outdoor management standards at level 3, you will have to get consent to assess for those.
And do you have any idea for the level 3 ones, what sort of evidence or qualifications or we may have to provide?
No, but what I will say is all of the standards have got much easier technically. So the requirements on you being able to assess, or the technical requirements on you being able to assess them, will be a lot lower. What we had to do is go for the technical requirements of the standards, we had to go from the level 4 standard, which are the NZQA leader levels, and the technical requirements for those standards at level 4, and we had to work down. So that you'll notice when you look at the new standards, they've all got way easier, in my opinion. I think that's true to say. So in that, so will the requirements to assess them. And I'd hope that Toymai and NZQA will recognise that as well. Other questions?
I'm presuming it's too late to apply for consent to assess now to be ready to go for February next year.
I don't know. I'd give it a go. And I guess it depends too whether it's a whole consent to assess or just an extension.
Yeah.
Toymai are expecting, and I think they're going to make it as easy as they can, because they're well aware of the changes and what that will mean for people's consent to assess, and the changes of standards and domains and levels and all of that work that we've done. So they're expecting schools to be applying for either extensions or new consents. So I think get onto it quickly and yeah, click that button and email them and tell them what you want. But the first step is probably to find out and make sure exactly what you hold now.
Yeah.
On that, I haven't actually seen anywhere where the numbers are for the new outdoor management standards, other than that, those examples you showed before, those 4 that are on the screen now, because I imagine there's more than that because there's 3 at each level.
Yeah, so these numbers, there's a whole lot of numbers in between here.
Yeah. So if we were going to apply, because I'm thinking the same as Doug, of applying for consent to assess for the level 3 ones.
Yep.
Are those numbers somewhere?
So as soon as you get the link after this chat, I'll send you the link to all of those standards in the Google Drive, and then just check out the, it's a bit of a pain because you have to go into each number, but you'll be able to work it out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep. Then you'll have the numbers and then you'll be good to go, hopefully. Good questions, everyone. It's complicated, and it definitely has not been the smoothest sailing, this project. It's a project that just keeps on giving.
After Schedule B is sorted,
yep.
Is there more in the pipeline, or is Schedule B it for the next review in X number of years?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm out. Just starting a little review process on the end of this is windsurfing. So that's starting another little process. Toymai from now on, they're the ones that pick up and review unit standards. So that's not a function of Skills Active anymore. So that'll be something that they look at, what standards get reviewed, when. I think probably the next thing will not be so much in the standards, but will be in outdoor qualifications full stop. I think that will be a piece of work that Toymai will be looking at next year. More questions? Wow. That had fewer questions than I was expecting. So from here, either if you want to join the EONS consortium and you want an invoice this year to pay in this year's budget, just email me. That's office at EONS. So that email address is in the chat, and we'll get that out to you in the next day or two so that you can get that paid. As soon as we've got those first assessment resources back from Toymai, we'll get them up on our website and we'll advertise again the process widely for joining that consortium. I'm not sure on the time frame for Skills Active, and because I know they will do a bit more work with those resources once they get back to combine them into their more integrated assessments. So their time frame, I'm sure, will be longer to have those available. But that's, you can just flick through and get their assessment resource catalogue and ask them those questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. I missed the first little bit because I was stuffing around with my computer. You may have already covered this. With the 2-year extension and then level 2 and level 3, that's not going to be, that's 3 or 4 or 5 years away now. So we're going to have this gap. We're going to have to create things before the achievement standards come on board.
Yes. So the unit standards, these standards, you've got the old ones or the old versions or the old standards if they're expiring for 2 years. But you can start using these new standards next year, and you can use these forever and a day unless they get expired at the next review.
What I'm saying is a lot of schools possibly are going to go to achievement standards, the new achievement standards which are coming out, and so you're sort of creating something, and then 2 years time you're creating something else.
Yes, but it probably more than 2 years time, as you say.
Yeah.
So, and I suspect a lot of schools may keep using the context unit standards and put those alongside achievement standards. There's all sorts of flexible ways you can go about that. And I also suspect once you look at these standards closely, they're not that different. They're just a lot smaller and easier. And the cores, you can either use with one context or run across your whole program. And again, there's opportunity to make a lot of changes, but there's also the opportunity, I think, to use the new standards without making huge changes to your programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fiona, can I ask a quick question just on that, because I've obviously missed this somehow. So the new achievement standards for level 2 and 3 outdoor education, they are not going to be ready for a number of years? Yeah, so with the delay, or not meant to call it a delay, rephasing of the NCA changes, there's a small pilot for level 1 achievement standards next year, a bigger pilot the year after, and then you have to use the new achievement standards at level 1 for the year after that, which is, what's that, 2024, is it? I thought it was only coming in at level 2 and 3.
Yeah, so then, but level 2 and 3 will have, because of that change, will have been pushed back another year as well.
So will there be achievement standards at level 1 for outdoor education specifically?
No.
Okay.
No, so there's no achievement standards just for outdoor education. You have the ability to use the PE standards in outdoor education contexts. So 2021, there's now a little pilot for level 1. 2023, a bigger pilot, I believe. 2024, you have to use level 1 achievement standards. And then so 2025 is possibly the first time you will have to use level 2 achievement standards. And that will be when you have the option to start using level 2 outdoor education achievement standards, as we understand it at this time. Before we get rephased again.
I've had a look at, sorry.
Oh, you go, Steve.
Yeah, I've had a look at the PE achievement standards. 2 of them actually work really well with outdoor ed. 2 of them don't.
Yeah.
So that probably could be a mix and match.
Yeah, and we've had, EONS has got someone on that subject expert group who's in there tasked with making sure that at least there are options in that level 1's achievement standard space for outdoor education. Achievement standards, there's just a question on chat. Achievement standards don't replace unit standards. You'll have the option to use both, or sort of mix and match, or have just achievement standard programs or have just unit standard programs at this stage. Good questions.
So sorry, when was the level 1 unit standards, achievement standards taking place?
I believe the plan was for them to be piloted quite widely next year, but they've now pulled that right down to, I think they've only got 5 or 6 pilot schools at the most. And then I believe there is another year where you'll be able to opt in, or there might just be a bigger pilot. And then I think 2024 is when schools will all use level 1 achievement standards. And then it's after that, the following year, it'll be bringing in level 2, and the following year, bringing in level 3.
Cool, but you can still mix and match with the unit standards.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And we're hoping that the subject expert group for outdoor education for the level 2 standards will be announced by the end of the year, even though the process is being put off somewhat. We're hoping that that initial development process will still start next year. So pretty excited about that, I think. And probably a number of you on here put your hand up for that. I hear that they had really good numbers of people and awesome people applying to be in that group. So it's good news all around the achievement standard space when we get there. All right, if there's no other questions, I'll let you all get about the busy end of year that it is. Okay.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Much appreciated. That was awesome.
No problems. And you're always welcome just to flick me through an email if you get stuck anywhere in the process or have any questions come up. You know, that office email gets to me. So yeah, really happy to point you in the right direction if I can't answer questions.
Fiona, if it's possible, would you be able, or you might have it on your to-do list anyway, I'm sure you do, to send through the recording from the Zoom you did on?
Oh, on COVID.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I haven't actually uploaded that one. It's a bit of a funny space at the moment. So what I might do is just send it through to you.
Awesome, thank you.
That's fine, yeah.
And thank you very much.
No problem. There's definitely some sticky questions in the COVID space at the moment. We'll have, EONS will have more guidance or updated guidance coming out for the start of next year once we work through a few things over the next week or so. But you can all go on holiday for now. Get a well-deserved break.
Sorry, Fiona, on the whole COVID chat, do you know roughly when we'd be able to get the updates on some of the procedures and policies for that as of tomorrow? Is it going live next week or?
Hang on just a tick. Just